Welcome back, George. After that, so we're going to get into your military background. I know you mentioned earlier that you joined the army at what, 18, 19?
Yeah, so I turned 18 in 1989 in August, and I joined the army in 1990 in February. So I was about 18 and a quarter, thereabouts. I joined the army in the Curragh. Went into the oldest infantry unit in the army, 3rd Infantry Battalion, known as the Bloods. The unit's motto is Dillis Gabra, loyalty forever.
Okay.
So when you look at military units in any military service, they all have this esprit de corps attached to the unit, and that their motto or battle cry would be, like, say, Dillis Gabra or Éireann Gabra or Fala Bala, which would be in the Royal Irish Regiment over in I think it's Fala Bala or Falagala. I forget now exactly, but like their battle cries to go into war.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the unit's motto or logo should be its battle cry as well, in many senses.
Right.
Yeah, so it's designed to kind of create a esprit de corps on the battlefield going into battle, but that comes from the time when there was skirmish lines.
Right.
Modern warfare would be very different in many ways. Not that I've been in war. I've been to Lebanon with the United Nations. Irish infantry training is really good. It's on par with the British military, any other unit or military in Europe. Same for cavalry and artillery. Just obviously we have a smaller defence force rather than a fighting army, so to speak. But I've worked with a lot of soldiers from different militaries, from American military, French military, British military, be that paratroopers, Royal Marine Commandos, Royal Irish Regiment, other regiments in the British Army, some guys from the German Army as well, and obviously French Foreign Legion or French regular military as well. So, on Irish soldiers, generally speaking, very capable, very skilled, very well trained, very well disciplined. There's characters as well, obviously. I think military life attracts people who are a little bit boisterous, some ways a little bit rule breakers, unconventional in some ways, and I think that's kind of some character traits of younger warriors.
Mm-hmm.
They want to cut away and be independent and be the man. I think it's younger men generally, certainly in my generation. People wanted to be their own man and do their own thing. Ego is a big thing when you're young.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I joined the military because I always wanted to be in the army as long as I could remember. I have uncles in the military and stuff like that, so that kind of inspired me to go in. I'm nowhere near as capable as them. In military terms, they were officers. I became a regular soldier. They were very well got. They're very highly educated, very well trained individuals to high levels. Including my own brother, he's a colonel. I have another brother who's a sergeant. Because I'm a bit rebellious, and I think I have a touch of ADHD. I get bored very easily with things, and that's what kind of pushed me around different martial arts as well, as that sense of exploration and stuff. And I'm not afraid to try new things. I don't like being comfortable in many ways, because you become complacent. I think that was a subconscious thing when I was younger. I didn't realise. And I think as time went by, I became more attuned to what I learned and how I learned and things. It's hard to explain because I regard my young me as an idiot. As somebody who had a very low IQ, not very intelligent or smart, didn't make smart decisions, but not afraid to take risks or try things out. And I think as I got older, I got smarter. But I'm very independently minded, and I like to go my own way and do my own thing. And I like to criticize things before I agree with them.
Which makes sense.
In a sense, like I'm critical of everything. I look at things from a critical perspective. I don't accept things at face value, ever, hardly. Yeah. But my time in the Irish Army was great. Like I trained with a great bunch of guys. 35 years, some of them still in the army today. 35 years this month, on the 12th of February would have been the entry day to join the army. Some of them are still working away at very high levels. In terms of military application, some of them are involved with special forces, some of them are in special forces, some of them are very highly trained technical people within the army, and the army gives a young man a great opportunity, or woman these days, because when I was in there was very few women in, but about a few months after we joined, the first all-female platoon in a long time came in. So those young ladies became very good soldiers and strong female leaders in the army. But what I would say is, when you're young and you don't have options, the military is always an option, and always has been, for especially socioeconomic people at a lower level, so lower middle class people, or people from impoverished backgrounds. And it was a thing. To get into the army, I had to do an interview. And I flew from Germany for the interview and then flew back, and the competition was stiff. Like, for, I don't know how many people there were taken in at the time, something like 100. There was like 3,000, 4,000 people done interviews to get into the Irish Army. And the Irish Army, comparatively speaking to other armies, is well paid. The average soldier in the British Army, private, first class, is about 250 quid a week, pounds. Irish soldiers are much, much more.
Okay.
Yeah, so, they, after recruit training, they're on about 38,000 a year.
Okay.
So it's not bad wages. You can do 2-3 years in an infantry unit or cavalry unit or artillery unit, and then you can take the option to go become a technician of some sort, or a mechanic, or learn a trade. And it's a great option. And all armies have those support elements in them. So back in the day, you used to have the apprentice school. So all the army apprentices would spend like 2-3 years learning their trade, but would also learn military skills, and then go to an engineering corps or transport corps or whatever. Yeah. But the capability of getting a trade or learning a skill within the army outside of just military skills is there. Like, you can go and become an IT specialist and stuff like that, or a signals communication specialist. Yeah, so there's lots of opportunity. And then with the United Nations deployments, for example, before Iraq, Afghanistan, the Irish Army had been in more war zones and more battle zones than the British Army had been the previous 20-30 years. So, like, Lebanon for 40 years or so now, I think, maybe a bit more, 45 even. The Irish Army's been in Lebanon since, 1978?
Okay. And when did you go to the Lebanon? How long were you in the army before you had your...
I joined 1990, and I went to Lebanon October 91.
And what was that like, as from your basic training to actually being out in the field?
Like I said, I regard my younger me as a bit of an idiot, right? Because you just took it as it came. And when I arrived in Lebanon, it kind of opened my eyes to, I'd been in Germany, I'd been in France, I'd been in Belgium by the time I got into the army, even Switzerland. But when I arrived in Lebanon, it kind of opened my eyes to a different environment, because you're in effectively a war zone. We had the Israelis on one side, the Hezbollah, Amal, and the Lebanese National Army on the other side, dealing with the local population, doing checkpoint controls at a checkpoint every day, all day long, and then going out on patrols around the town, looking for weapons caches and stuff like that. That was kind of the theory behind it. And then doing minds and hearts kind of thing, where you're communicating with the locals, buying stuff off them, making friends with them, and that kind of gives you then what you call human intelligence, to talk to you, tell you something. They might not tell the officer, they might not tell the NCO, but you get that little bit of information, pass it on to your bosses, and let them deal with it. And then you're working on the checkpoint, and you get to know the faces in the town. And you get to communicate with people, children going to school every day. I remember being in Lebanon, and there was some heavy shelling coming from the Israeli side. Kids were still going to school. They were walking past us as things were blowing up and kids were just going to school. Now, it wouldn't have been heavy shelling. If it was heavy, they'd stay home. You know, there was an incursion when I was there from the Israelis into Lebanon, and we had an incident at the checkpoint. And I was on duty on checkpoint with one of the other guys, well, two of the other guys and an NCO. And all of a sudden, loads of cars came from both sides. And there was guys from Hezbollah and Amal trying to get to the front, and guys trying to get down to get ammunition and people and bring them up to where they were fighting. And it became an incident. The officer closed the checkpoint to try and establish some order because the cars were pushing through, and you know, technically you're supposed to close the checkpoint, but you know, that would have then aggravated the situation for us more, and we would have become the victims of in a shootout. And there was a lot more of them than there was of us. Like, you know, on the checkpoint, our compound was beside the checkpoint, so you know, one guy got frustrated, and my friend and I were this much apart from each other. One guy got out of a car, cocked his AK and fired off a few rounds between us. My friend dived behind the T-wall. I just cocked my weapon and walked towards him. My tunnel vision just went boom. And that's where I got my first really high intensity experience of auditory and visual preclusion. More so auditory. I couldn't hear what was going on. Your hearing just goes down. And I focused. I could see this guy's face clearly. I just zeroed right in on him. And I had cocked my weapon was up, and I was walking towards him, and I couldn't hear clearly, but I heard my sergeant shouting at me, "George, stop." Right? So third time he shouted, I went, "What?" and put on a safety catch and walked back to where I was. That could have set off a whole incident, but my training was so instinctual that I responded the way I should have responded in a war setting. We were in a peacekeeping setting, which was more of a policing role. Now, would it have been justified in returning fire? Sure, but then there was a couple of hundred Hezbollah Amal surrounded, 30 guys or 20 guys from the Irish Army. We would have all been killed. So, but training becomes automatic, and it's like what I was saying about earlier on, is like building neural pathways. Some people call it muscle memory, but really what you're doing is you're practicing something often enough that the neural pathway gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it becomes easier to do that exact thing. Or combination of things, so that you don't have to think about it.
It kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about basics as well. The basic stuff is the stuff that...
Yeah. So, and then it goes back to the lesson I learned from that was control. Not to let yourself being sucked into the energy of the moment, still being slightly objective in the circumstance, being able to regulate. Because when adrenaline kicks in, you get auditory and visual preclusion. It's an emotional state. Sorry. It's an emotional state. So you're reacting based on instinctive training that has become instinct. Yeah. So your instinct and you're taught and trained, this is what you do. Well, yes, it is, except for. And then you realize, okay, I haven't trained the except for.
Right.
Which in combat is redundant, because in combat you don't need the except for, because combat is all out until it's over. Yeah, but the pre-contact indicators, the precursors to actual contact and actual combat, like he fired, right? A few rounds between my mate. My mate dived behind the T-wall. I just went automatic pilot, bam, right? But I didn't have this buffer because I was young, because I was well trained, but like I said, a little bit stupid. Yeah, that I went into full automatic to go to war, where that wasn't required in that setting. So I learned a valuable lesson about control, and I had to have a chat with, well, my sergeant had to have a chat with me, right? You know, and explain the consequences of actions, because every action you take has a consequence. I won't say an equal and opposite one, but certainly maybe a good one or a devastating one, depending on the circumstances itself.
That makes sense. And after that, then you did what? Did one tour? 6 months? Is that how long you spent?
6 months in Lebanon. So I was over winter. Went down to Israel on a couple of R&R trips. I went to Germany for 2 weeks over Christmas to visit my friends, and then came back, and then finished out the trip in April, I think it was. Came home, and then from there straight into what I'd been doing before, which was duties in the guard room, Portage prison, tours of duty in Portage prison, which lasted about 3 months. When you do, at a time, you do like 3 days on, 3 days off, which was really 3 days on, a day traveling back home and putting the weapons into the barracks, and then like 2.5 days off.
And is there a transition coming back from, say, like being in a war-torn zone to coming back to just everyday life? Like, are you still on a high? Are you...
Well, when you're out there, you're kind of looking at things differently, and you kind of grow up a bit. And I would say this would be the case for everybody who's deploying to a conflict zone or on UN peacekeeping missions or something similar, peace enforcement missions. You start to think about things differently. You start to look at things differently. You start to look for ways to occupy yourself, because there's no dojo to go to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You know, so you find ways to train. You become creative and inventive. You know, I bought a set of weights off a local. Everybody on our compound used them. We trained. We went for runs. Which we could do. So it wasn't that hostile. It was austere. So it was kind of like what I would say there's a difference between an austere environment, a hostile environment, and a war zone. Yeah. So it was an austere environment which was relatively controlled, with easy flow of movement and communication between locals and us and other elements in the area, because there was always somebody high up doing talking, negotiating, whatever. But then when shit hit the fan, if the Israelis and the Hezbollah and the Mal were fighting with each other, then things went to shit, and everybody kind of went on a different footing. Okay. And then like a few days later it would calm down, and then everybody kind of slowly, gradually went back to what was normal there. And then when you come back from Lebanon, you get a month off to reacclimatise. Okay. So you get some downtime, maybe go on a holiday with your partner or yourself or whatever. I was young and single, so I wasn't single, I had a girlfriend in France, so I went to France. Spent time there. Her father was actually a major in the French military, which is Sergeant Major, and he thought I was AWOL. So I used that to produce to my girlfriend's dad my permission to be out of the state and my leave pass. Right? But you get a chance to decompress, and then you go back to regular service. And then it just starts up again, and it becomes daily life. You have to be adaptable. Yeah. I mean, it was the thing too, like when I worked on the ships doing anti-piracy. Could be on a ship for 10 days, 17 days. I was on one ship for a whole month. So you fly into Cairo, drive 2.5 hours to Suez, stay in a hotel there for a night, and the next day you're in the middle of the Suez Canal climbing up a ladder onto a container ship.
So it's very different. So when did you leave? What was the transition then from the military service to doing what?
So I left the army in the end of 95, went to Germany, had my dojo there for 4 years, went to France for a year, came back, started working in security, and I went back to school as well. So I went to Trinity College. I was studying Germanic languages and then changed over to history. And I was married at that stage. I met my ex-wife, Natalia, who's the mother of my beautiful daughter. And I was working towards a degree, but basically life was taking us in a different direction. We wanted to get a house, wanted to get a mortgage. So being a student, even though I was working part-time and I had all the student fees payments that I was getting, I was probably making more money as a student than I was as a full-time employee at the time in the regular security industry. I wanted to try something else, and a friend of mine had done a bodyguard course. My mate Mike, who has the podcast Project Archangel. Oh, yes. He has an English version and a German version. And Mike was done a bodyguard course and went out to Iraq to work. And he said, look, if you do this course with this guy, who is ex-SAS, most likely I can get you a job, get you a start, and make good money out here, because they were on like $400 or $500 a day. I went, okay. So that was my way of thinking about it. Was I go out there, do I think it was 8 weeks on, 4 weeks off at the time, and I would make enough money for a deposit for a house, car, quickly. So I went off and done that bodyguard course, and naturally then things changed, being Irish, coming from a neutral country, not having NATO security clearances or anything like that is very difficult. So when you're working in areas like Iraq or Afghanistan, a lot of people don't know this, it costs about 40k to get security clearance for an operator to work. Yeah, so Afghanistan, working in ISAF, you have to be registered with ISAF, that's 40k. Then ISAF was the interim security forces, I think. I forget what the acronym stands for, but it was like NATO in Afghanistan. Yeah. So ended up not getting a job in CP. Done a couple of ad hoc tasks for executive protection. Spent a year and a half doing residential security which is part of executive or close protection, but it's at the residence. For a high net worth individual here in Ireland is well known. And then I moved on to maritime security as a stepping stone to try and get into Iraq and Afghanistan. So I went off and done maritime security operators course, and then ship security officer and port facility security officer, and then you had to go off and get a, what was it called? Weapon certification, because you have to have that specific certification to work on the ships. And you're working under the laws of the flag of the ship. So if the flag is registered in Liberia, you're working under Liberian laws. If it's in Germany, if it's a German registered ship, you're working under their laws. So you have to know their laws for use of firearms. And then kind of ended up working, 2010, end of 2010 until 2016 in maritime security anti-piracy operations. Started off on a Spanish fishing vessel that was operating out of Seychelles, and then ended up working mostly cargo vessels.
And when you say the maritime, like, is there a specific area that you were needed for, or is it all around the world?
Red Sea and the high-risk area in the Indian Ocean, which is down by Yemen. Bab al-Mandeb is in the news a lot lately with the Houthis. Mm-hmm. That's 25 miles apart from Yemen to Africa. And that area, Bab al-Mandeb, is what's called an area of international right of passage. So you can't be obstructed in that area, because 12 miles on is 12 miles out from the coast is the national waters of any nation. And then there's an extended economic zone. It goes up to 200, 300 miles, something like that. But in Bab al-Mandeb, you're only 25 miles from continent to continent. Well, from the African continent to the Arab Peninsula. So we would start in Suez, sail down the Red Sea, put in all the defensive measures, put up razor wire, create the funnels where people can go, specifically pirates. And that would be done by the time we get roughly to the 15 North Line, which is around where Jeddah is on Saudi Arabia, but you're in the middle of the Red Sea. And we'd sail through Bab al-Mandeb, come out, and then go to what's called the International Transit Corridor, where all the ships went up and down, and where Operation Atalanta, I think it was called, had escort vessels from the British Navy, American Navy, Chinese Navy, Indian Navy, and Turkish Navy. It was international kind of thing, right? Mm. And we would be escorted along there, and then we would either go up to Oman or up to Fujairah in the UAE, or around to Khalifa Port, which is up over the peninsula and down again, or we would sail down to Sri Lanka to Gal. And then when we're getting off the vessel, we would either bring the weapons with us into port, and they would be held in a armory at port point of entry, right? Or put them on the floating armory, it's called. Oh. Sometimes we would stay on the floating armory as well, because there was accommodations there for us for 3-4 days, maybe a week, and then get on another vessel and go again.
So when you do, so would each separate ship be a different contract?
Yeah.
So and how long roughly would a contract
Depends
be?
on the distance of point of pickup and point of destination to where you're going within the high risk area.
Right.
Okay, so the high risk area basically was from, let's say, 15 North Line in the Red Sea, through Bab al-Mandeb, all the way down to Africa towards the northern tip of Madagascar and across. So, like, I didn't go to the Maldives, but I know guys who boarded vessels and disembarked from vessels in the Maldives. I, like I said, worked in the Seychelles, out of the Seychelles for a couple of months doing Spanish tuna fishing vessels. I know guys who went to Madagascar, and they boarded and disembarked there. Then I know guys, like I went down to Durban in South Africa as well, so you bring weapons to, put them in an armory there and wait in Durban and then fly back up to Ireland. So but you could be on a vessel from between, depending how fast the vessel went. So if you were sailing from Suez down to Sri Lanka, if it was going 13, 14 knots, it could be 10, 12 days by the time you get to Sri Lanka.
Okay.
But it was only going like 10 knots or less, could be 17 to 20 days.
So would you go from A to B and get off? That's the end of your contract, or would it be a there and back?
No, you get off.
You get off.
Yeah, because after Gal in Sri Lanka, which is the southern tip of Sri Lanka, lovely place by the way if you want to go on holidays, nice beaches, and people are lovely as well, and there's lots to see, and it's a Buddhist and Hindu country.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But you get off in Gal and that ship would sail further then to Singapore, Malacca Straits, into Indonesia and that area, right? Or if you boarded in Gal, you would sail up along the coast of India, making sure you're not too close to India because they get very particular about weapons. I know guys who were on a vessel and it was a floating armory, and they were caught in bad weather and they asked for sanctuary in the port, and the Indian government said yeah, and then they arrested everybody, and the maritime security contractors ended up being in jail for 6 years or something like that. Yeah, one guy committed suicide from the crew. They were from Ukraine and they were kept in jail. And then, it can be awkward because if you don't have the right paperwork, end user certificates for destinations for the weapons and stuff like that, and the ammunition, you're breaking law, you're importing weapons illegally into a country, you could end up in jail for a long time. So there's a lot to it. It's very complex, right? So I remember taking a vessel with a Ukrainian captain, and the vessel, some captains tend to try to stick close to the coast because of the currents. It makes the vessel go faster and they can save on fuel, and they get a bonus for saving fuel. And I remember waking up one morning because I was team leader, and I got up onto the bridge with coffee and looked out the window and I can see the beach. I said to Captain, where are we? I said, that's the coast of India. I said, Captain, get 60 miles off the coast of this place, quick. He goes, why? I said, and I told him the story about the guys getting arrested. I said, you don't want to be arrested in India, do you? He goes, no, get out 60 miles off the coast, if not further. But it's going to cost a lot of money. I think, doesn't matter. I'm not doing it. I said, okay, give me the phone. Call my boss. I said, call his boss to tell him to move this vessel 60 miles off the coast of India now. And that was all on satellite phone. It was like 10 euros a minute. Right? Wow. He got a call. Okay. Nice thing, the ship was moving out. Yeah. Very lucky, very, very lucky. Some people just don't think about the dangers.
No, you wouldn't really. Yeah.
So, but like...
And would there be many of you on a team? Now, you said you were a team leader. Was there many in your team?
So I trained most of the team leaders in the company I worked for. That's how I got into training people in the security industry, really. So weapons handling, manipulation, immediate action drills on stoppages and stuff like that, and then we would do test fires on the weapons to see that the weapons function properly. You only be put a target into the water, a box, shoot at the box, cardboard box, shoot at the box, try and hit that, and kind of try to zero in your weapon as well, because you wouldn't always have the equipment to zero in the weapon because you don't know what weapon system you're getting, because sometimes you could get an AK or a Chinese version of that called a dashprod, or an old FN file, or an SLR. I like the FNs and the SLRs. They're larger caliber and nicer to shoot for me personally, because that's what I learned to shoot with. But when you go do the test fires and stuff like that, that's just kind of function check that the weapon is working.
And when you're dealing with, say pirates or people that were attacking, what would they come in to take?
So you get what's called a suspect vessel approach, right? So somebody in the crew would be checking the radar, like usually the second officer, check the radar, and they go, George, I have a suspect vessel. He's 3 miles away, but his CPA, or closest point of approach, is midship, which is the middle of the vessel. I'm like, what speed is he going at? And he'd be going, 12 knots. I said, and what speed are we going at? 12 knots. I said, let's wait and see. So by the time he's into 2 miles, or a mile and a half, I can see him, because let's say the sea is flat, there's no big waves, he's moving He's not moving too fast, trying not to draw attention,
Right.
right? So then I make my guys on the bridge aware. I call up you'll be doing a 4 on 8 off rotation if there's 3 of us. If there's 4 of us, they would be doing a 4 on 8 off, and I would be there 6 and 6.
Right.
Yeah. So, because I believe I have to be there with my guys working with them, that kind of way. Other guys will be in their cabin watching the movie. But, and it's long, hard, tiring. It's not physically exhausting. It's just tiring because you're out in the hot sun in the middle of the Indian Ocean all day long, continuously, 4 hours on, 8 hours off, and it rotates. Yeah.
Right.
But they would make a suspect vessel approach, and you'd be watching them, and the closer they got, the more alert you became, until a certain point that, let's say, they're within 500-600 meters, 1,000 meters. You would have your guys out on the bridge wing holding their weapons up like that to show that you have a weapon. You would also have somebody in the crew making an announcement over the loudspeakers, but it's very hard for them to hear it 1,000 meters away in the wind, right? But you're showing that you're armed. At that stage, if they've got binoculars or they've got good eyesight, they're turning and going. If they're still adamant about coming to the vessel, they're making further approach. So then you would take action in the form of firing warning shots into the air, then warning shots into the water, and warning shots into the body of the vessel. After that, then it's lethal force.
Okay.
So you're using the UN protocol, rules of use of force set out by the UN policing policy. So it's progressive. It's not an immediate action of attack unless you're being shot at.
Right, changes it.
Then that circumstance changes and you shoot back. Yeah, but you don't just slap people. And, there's some people out there that had that kind of mentality, but when they were working with me, I educate them.
Yeah.
Because you get people from different cultures, different societies, different backgrounds. And some people are out there with fantasy mindset of going, yeah, I'm a pirate, I'm anti-piracy operator, I'm going to do this, I'm going to... No, you're not going to do that.
And would you ever was there ever a case where you had maybe more than one vessel?
I done 1 month from Sri Lanka to Suez on a tugboat. Now, a tugboat was going about 7 knots, which you can walk faster. Right?
Yeah.
If you put a bit of effort, you can walk faster, right? And I had a 5-man team, 2 Sri Lankans, myself, another Irish guy, and a Ukrainian former officer from Spetsnaz.
And just to clarify, a tugboat, it's so slow? Is it a big, huge vessel that's
Tugboat,
carrying
the
loads?
boats that tug ships out of the corners and in
Oh, right,
harbours
you were
and
on one of
ports.
those, the small
in
ones.
one of those,
Okay.
pushing a barge.
Oh, okay. So there was, gotcha.
But somebody had bought the tugboat and the barge, and they were bringing it from, I think, maybe Indonesia. We got on in Sri Lanka, right, and we welded kind of firing positions on it because we knew it was going to be really difficult if we got attacked, because the freeboard was this much from the water. That's the water. Freeboard was here in certain areas. Yeah. And then we put watch on the barge, put watch on the pilot bridge, which is directly over the normal bridge. And there was a small crew, and there was 5 of us, and we just rotated throughout the day. And we got to Bab el-Mandeb, and and it was like 4 or 5 in the morning, and my 2AC, which was the Ukrainian Spetsnaz guy,
Your second in command.
second in command, yeah, he came up to me and said, George, we're getting sharked here. So if like in self-defense, from a self-defense perspective, if somebody is a predator and wants something from you, he's going to circle you to find a weak spot to access. And there may be 2 or 3 of them. Well, what I woke up to was like small little skiffs, which are like little power boats, and they were circling our vessel, like sharking us. So basically they were getting too close, some of them, and it was dodgy, and I had told the captain to go a different route, and he mistook it for the route he took. So he was too close to Yemen, basically about 5 miles off the coast.
Right.
And there was a lot of fishermen, and then some of them are opportunistic pirates. So they will take a chance at taking a vessel hostage, but they're not necessarily the Somali pirate you would think about. So, but there was Somali pirates mixed in, and they were looking for an opportunity. So basically we were hunted for about 5 hours, 6 hours, from Baba Mandib all the way up to 15 knot line, and then they turned back. But they were doing a leapfrog, and some of them were coming around us trying to find an access point because our freeboard was so low, and we had a barge that we had to push, and we were going so slow. It was like 7, 8 knots. The fastest I think we went was 9 knots. It's not fast at all. It's a little bit more maybe than 10 miles an hour. I'm not good at the calculations on that, so don't hold me to that. But that was a bit stiff. Fired a few warning shots into the water. Yeah, so a few into the air. Showed them that we're armed. A couple of times, vessels getting too close. So after firing warning shots more than one set of times, you're wasting ammunition, and that's what they're doing. It's a penetration test, so they want you to waste their ammunition. They know through previous experience and intelligence and looking at people talking about stuff on Facebook and everywhere else that a maritime security team has a limited amount of ammunition. We didn't. We had like 7,000 rounds of ammunition. Yeah, but we had that amount of ammunition because we knew the dangers of having the vessel that we were on. It is much more prone to being attacked because of its size, because of its speed, because of the freeboard. Like you could literally step, if a wave went up on a skiff, if you're at the bow of the skiff, you could literally step onto our vessel. There was nothing stopping you.
Right.
You know, except for a bit of razor wire. What's a bit of razor wire? 2 foot. You know, you can kind of jump over it. Yeah. And if the wave is big enough, you can just jump off of it onto the deck.
Okay.
So,
and how long did you do the anti-piracy work for?
Well, like I said, I started kind of the autumn, around the end of 2010, and then I'd done that till 2016.
Okay.
So, and in between that, I was doing security gigs. I could do work at some event security, or, you know, doing CP at events, minding pop stars, stuff like that, and or just doing security management at an event, controlling teams. Okay. Or other bits and pieces, you know, asset protection, moving goods around for people. Maybe taking, like an example of asset protection would be like an executive in company A wants executive in company B that's in Australia to receive this letter by hand or these documents by hand to be signed and then collected and taken away again. So you would get on a plane, fly to Australia with an envelope, get them to sign it, stay there 2 days and fly back. That's all you're doing. You're just going in as kind of a document delivery service. But well, that would be one example. Another one would be you have asset protection. You know those portable Wi-Fi or telephone towers?
Yes.
Yeah, minding them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, or in the UK, or traffic light systems. And hit roadworks because people were robbing the batteries out of the traffic light systems or damaging the traffic light system and stealing them or whatever. So, you know, it's not so bad getting paid for that. But so it goes from asset to person to large assets. So when you're doing maritime security, you're protecting the vessel, but you're also protecting the crew. Yeah, the vessel is what's worth real money. The crew, in insurance terms, less.
Right.
But my job is always to protect people. I would protect people before property.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so and that's kind of the ethos you're working from.
So it was an easy transition then into working as a bodyguard with
well,
people.
I'd already been trained as a bodyguard. I'd already worked as a bodyguard before I'd done maritime security. It was just a different aspect. It's
a different way.
Protecting people on water in an enclosed environment from a threat that's outside that enclosed environment.
I guess, yeah.
So it's a floating house.
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
So should you be doing the same stuff you would be in a house?
Yeah. You're monitoring, you're patrolling, you're on the bridge wings, you're out looking, you have your binos out, you're checking the radar, you know, you might do a fire walk through the accommodation stack. You might go out and walk on the deck, but very rarely at night time because things happen, people fall off ships. But you would only do that if there was a suspicion that somebody was on the vessel or after gaining access to the vessel. So pirates tended to, at the time at least, try and attack and board a vessel at dusk and at dawn, where people were their tiredest and where the light was going down. If you're in the middle of the Indian Ocean, you're literally near the equator. Like that, it goes from light to dark.
Okay.
Yeah. So, especially at the equator, it's 12-12. You know. Yeah. So, and it gets real dark. real dark. That means you will see the light of another vessel 11, 12, 15 miles away.
Oh, okay.
Further away. Now, in daytime, you can only see as far as the horizon, which is about 10, 11 miles. And it kind of gets all hazy and foggy. It's amazing what you think. Like, one of the strangest things I had ever seen at that time was being in the middle of the ocean and seeing this cloud with rain coming out of it, and all around it no rain. Right? And then actually sailing through it. And the rain shower was heavy, but lasted like 2 minutes. And when it wasn't raining on me, it was raining 4 feet away from me. Do you know what I mean? So you get these kind of natural phenomena that you wouldn't think about on land because you're not moving.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you'd see it in a car, driving the car. Oh, it's raining. Oh, it's not raining. But you don't take it on board like you do when you're actually standing in the rain
That makes sense.
and in the middle of the ocean.
And then after that, then did you do much work abroad, like going into different countries, not on the ship?
So, in 2010, I took 16 Irish guys to Camp Bastion in Afghanistan for a construction project. So I recruited them, done all the paperwork for them, and we went working for a construction company. I was there 6 weeks, just helping them settle in. They stayed from February until May in 2010. So that would have been my first kind of security consultancy job, really. Because it involved recruitment, security briefing, giving them a country brief, telling them what they were going to be doing, processing them, and then getting them in there. And I stayed there for 6 weeks, but the last guy left in kind of May or June 2010. Then I went into maritime security. And while I was doing the maritime security on and off, I would do ad hoc close protection tasks, 2, 3, 5 days long. So when I come back off maritime security tasks, back when I was doing it, you could go for 10 days and go home. But then they started keeping people there maybe around 2015, 2014 on the floating armories. So, or keeping you on site and in Gal for 5 days waiting for another vessel to pick you up, bring you back. Whereas before you would go to Gal, fly in the plane, go home.
Oh, okay.
So the costs started going down. Well, the cost of having people on the ground ready to move started to go up, or people seeing a way to cut the costs and make more money. And then kind of the money was going down in wages, and I decided, okay, I'm getting out of this. And I went off and done some training and instructors courses. And as you know, I've done loads of them now at this stage. And I was teaching normal security skills here in Ireland and doing doing some consultancy work and some bodyguarding and other bits and pieces like that here for a while. Then I got to England to do it, and I ended up in Madagascar in 2018, working over there for 4 months, minding an executive who was under threat from a local politician, supported by, shall we say, some Russian parties. Right, so I had to deal with them and protect this guy, and I worked closely with the local special forces. So they were my team.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had a special forces team from the Madagascan military police, or the gendarmerie. Wouldn't be to the same standard as Western special forces, but they were smart guys, and I trained them up while working with them as I was going along. And I spent, 3 months there. That initially started out as a 2-week task. I ended up being 3 months. And then I came home. And then COVID came along. You know, I was training people as well, but COVID came along and then shut me down for business, and like everybody suffered a bit. Then I went and got involved with a military training advisor company, and I went to Saudi Arabia for 6 months to train the military police in close protection, counter-attack team, QRF, quick reaction force, and defensive tactics, arrest, restraint and control for military police, and unarmed combat, which is slightly different. So you're teaching police defensive tactics, arrest and restraint and control techniques, and the use of batons, weapons retention, keeping their weapons, taking weapons off people, but not in the way you think. Like, it's not kind of going to be this kind of silly guy who puts a gun to your head. type thing. When you get into an entanglement with somebody, you're wrestling on the ground, they try to pull out a knife or a gun, you're keeping it retained and controlled so it doesn't come out to get to you, and eventually disarm them if you can. Right? Usually by knocking them out, sorry, but you know, if their brain is not working, their hand is not working. Yeah. Then obviously based on law and rules of use of force within the police force itself. So you're teaching them based on their policies and procedures, and you design the defensive tactics, arrest, restraint and control system around their policies, their tactics and their culture. Right? So you have to be culturally aware of who you're dealing with. Then taught them unarmed combat as well, which is a bit different. So when you're teaching military unarmed combat, there's no rules. It's not sport. And it's battlefield stuff. So you're talking about, when I say battlefield stuff, I mean in the battle space, whether it's you're doing building entries and you're doing CQB close quarter battles, and it goes to CQC close quarter combat. So close quarter battle is the techniques that are used to enter rooms and buildings, and close quarter combat is when you get close within arm's length between.
So that you'd be wearing your flak jackets.
You'd be wearing all the kit, and helmet, body armor, the works, carrying ammunition, primary, secondary, and tertiary weapons. So if you don't have a tertiary weapon, you should. It's my view. And then also I've done kind of terrorism awareness training for a large company in London, and delivered the terrorism awareness training course before they brought out the action counter-terrorism system they have over there, which is an online program to certify people to be aware of terrorism. And about 2 days later, they had the London Bridge attack. Yeah, and then when I was in Madagascar, I went to Kenya to update my visa for Madagascar, and I was in the Doucet Hotel the day or so before the terrorist attack there.
That was the big terror attack that killed quite a few people.
So there's a connection of mine. He was one of the guys who responded with Chris Craighead, Dan Proslanto, I think is his name. I can't pronounce his last name. Dan is from Slovenia, but he was a manager or the owner of a company that provided security at embassies in Kenya, and he responded. Helped save about 700 people. Maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, I'm not sure exactly. But Dan has done an interview with my friend Mike on Project Archangel. So if anybody wants to hear what happened at the Doucet terrorist attack, they can go to Project Archangel and listen to Mike's interview with Dan. So I was kind of close, but not there at a couple of incidents. You know, I keep on saying I was lucky, you know, in many respects. But look, so that's basically rounding off what I've done in terms of security work. I train door supervisors, normal static guards, bodyguards, teach people self-defense and personal safety. I've taught some of the Irish military as a guest instructor. You were there with me as a guest instructor in unarmed combat instructors course. I've taught the Saudi military police. After the terrorist attacks in Sousse and Tunis, I went to Tunis for a company training people in 2 separate hotels for a week long each, one in Sousse and one in Tunis, the capital city. Sousse being the area where the terrorist attack happened. There was an Irish lady killed there. So I delivered a full hospitality industry security awareness program, which included understanding terrorist modus operandi, understanding threats, the risks, search procedures, escort procedures, you know, escorting difficult people out of bars and off the site or whatever, semi-compliant, compliant, non-compliant, defense against edge weapons, defense against blunt force weapons, how to use them, and some personal safety and self-defense, personal safety and self-protection skills, and then medical skills and triage skills for in the event of a terrorist attack, how to create a triage bay and process people for medical care. Absolutely. You know, so dealing with an emergency plan.
And you're still teaching, I know you still teach bodyguard.
I teach occasionally, you know, because I have a full-time job, kind of more normal, relaxed, because I'm 53 now and I want to be close to my daughter and, you know, be around for her when she's around. But I still go around teaching people personal safety, self-defense, and I teach bodyguard courses. So I've taught an SIACP course in Poland for European Security Academy. I've taught close protection courses for Elite Academy in Norwich. In conjunction with Elite academy in Norwich with a couple of companies, Irish and international, and that's kind of like a hobby at this stage, in the sense that I do it kind of on the side when I have time, but I might be going back into it full time. It depends now. I'm just kind of reflecting and revising where my life is going to go. Thinking of starting a training company with specializing in specialist training systems, so personal safety, self-defense, arrest and restraint for police, military police, airport police, inland waterways, national forestry here in Ireland. That's what my target would be. Wouldn't necessarily be able to get them all because there is one or two other companies out there doing that. But looking on the other side of it then is training people for close protection and personal safety.
And is the close protection, would you say, is it getting busier with all that's going on in the world today?
There's a lot of stuff after happening, especially after the guy in New York, the pharmaceutical executive got shot. There was an increased demand for executives to have executive protection. But that demand has always been there. It's just, it ebbs and flows based on threat analysis and based on incidents. With the way the world is changing now in terms of international business, things are going to change with Donald Trump taking over. We have a lot of American companies in Ireland, and they have global security officers who are in charge of the protection of the executives. The insurance policies with those companies demand that they have executive protection. Some executives, CEOs, don't want executive protection. Some will want it to be overt, as in very visible. Some will want it to be low profile, as in slightly visible, and some will want it to be not visible at all, so covert. Through me and my contacts and associates, we can deliver that type of product all over Europe, if not the world.
So what you're saying is that insurance companies sort of demand, like they say that we need...
Well, insurance companies insure the business. If something happens to the CEO, the shareholders lose money.
Gotcha.
Because the price value of and stock value of the company will go down. Like if something happened to Mark Zuckerberg tomorrow, he got killed in a terrorist attack, God forbid. But if something happened to him tomorrow, Meta goes for a deep dive. Yeah. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. So they have to take immediate measures. Like Mark Zuckerberg's CP team, apparently, like he has a lot of people protecting him, and his protection budget is very high.
Right.
Yeah. So his executives come here, depending where they are in the hierarchy of his business, they also get protection.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So whoever's there. So you have, what have you got in Dublin? Microsoft, Amazon, Google, YouTube, Yahoo. Do we have Yahoo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've Meta, Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, LinkedIn,
Pinterest.
Pinterest.
Yeah.
Pinterest. You've Larian. Those are the big names off the top of my head, anyway.
Yeah. So they all have global security managers, and they all have event security managers, and those guys interact with the protective services within their companies. So their global security manager will be over all the security aspects, and then they'll have specialist security managers in specific areas. In the protective security area, they design a executive protection program for the executives globally, and then they extend that to different locations. Now, they might travel with executives from America. The American executives in particular will get escorted or be accompanied by executive protection. How many guys? Depends.
Okay.
Yeah. And sometimes they'll take one guy from America and hire 3 guys here. And cars.
Okay.
And in Ireland, you have to have a PSV license to drive, supplying service of transporting a person from A to B. And the Americans want high-end cars that are no older than 5 years old. And there's only a certain amount of those cars in Ireland, and there's only a certain amount of people with them. So there's very specific companies that do it all the time. I have an issue with some of those chauffeur service companies because they're saying they have security trained drivers, and they don't.
Right.
They just have drivers who maybe, see, security trained, being an ex-cop doesn't mean you're security trained.
No. Yeah.
Being an ex-soldier doesn't mean you're security trained for the corporate executive protection industry, right? Being a qualified chauffeur certainly doesn't make you security trained. It makes you security aware. Yeah, and there's a different, or security adjacent. It's like guys who said they were bodyguards because they stood on the red carpet when somebody was at a film. Yeah, no, you were security, functioning as an event security guy at a red carpet event. You weren't a bodyguard or a close protection officer. Yeah. There's a difference. It's like guys who work at events. I worked at events. I was an event security manager, right? And I had my own teams, right? And it's like guys who sit work at events because they escorted pop star A to from point A to B, 200 meters, they're a bodyguard. No. No. You're an event security guy who walks somebody from A to B.
I can see where.
Yeah. There's a lot of people.
Bodyguard sounds nicer.
There's a lot of people like to cloud the environment with BS and pump themselves up and say they're bodyguards or close protection operatives. They're not. You can be a gopher and a fixer. And some people that do that, we call them gophers, right? But they're fixers. They go get this, go get that. and they fix things and they arrange things. So you're like a logistics manager of sorts, right? And bodyguards can do that too. Close protection officers do that a lot, right? You're involved with sorting out logistics and stuff like that, making sure things run smoothly, and you're in contact with personal assistants and stuff like that. But you get guys who do that primarily and then tell everybody they're close protection officers. No, you're not. Unless you've been trained, right, and have worked as a close protection officer, starting at the bottom rung, which is residential security, right, providing protection at somebody's home for somebody, right, and worked your way up, or been taken on tasks and mentored and guided through it with on-the-job training, as we call it, yeah, because some people could have a really good bodyguard course done, they could have performed well in the bodyguard course, but in layman's terms, they're a bag of shit on the job. Right? Yeah. So turn out to be lazy, not consequent about what they're doing, not punctual, not dressed properly, or wearing clothes that don't fit, that are too big, too small, wearing the wrong shoes. So the dress code is based on the principle and what they're doing that day at that time, or what event they're going to, if they're going to an event, if they're going to dinner. So you have to dress. So from work, where you're searching cars and cleaning cars out, to check for any bugs or tracking devices, to business class or black tie event. And you have to blend in. So you have to be paid commensurately, right? Because you have expenses. Yes. You have to get what I would call, like for me personally, if I'm working as a CP in Ireland, doing the CP task, I would expect 350 euros for a 10-hour day. I take 250 euros for 4 hours or less. For every hour after that is 50 euro an hour. And if I'm a team leader, that's another pay scale. Yeah, and if you're a paramedic, I would expect if I was a paramedic or an EMT to be paid a little bit more than the average CP because I have an extra credential that might give me 20 euros an hour extra. Okay. Right, or 10 euros an hour extra, which may pay me or 25 euros in the day extra, so instead of 350, 375, 400, okay, roughly. Your skill level. Yeah, you're paid for different skill sets, and there are different people with different skill sets in the CP team. Now, majority of CP work would not have more than 2 or 3 people here in Ireland. Majority, but then there are exceptions to every rule. Okay. And you could be with somebody really famous, really important, or really special in the sense that they belong to a company and they only want one CP. So you're carrying the can for everything. Wow. So that means then, okay, how much you paying me? How long is the job? The longer the job, the less you get. In how I would do this is, if it's a long job, I would go work for less, but only because it's guaranteed it's longer. Yeah. Yes. The shorter, I would expect to get more.
So maybe doing 3 or 4 days or something like that. So you're on that.
So if I'm 3 or 4 days, it's 350 a day for 10-hour day. Okay. Right. If I'm doing 50 days, well, it might be 310, 320. Right. Maybe lower. If it's guaranteed, that kind of way. Because you're working for yourself as a bodyguard. You're self-employed. Right. Yeah. So it's not a licensable activity here in Ireland. It is in the UK, France, Germany, and a couple other countries in the European Union. Certainly, it's statewide. In the US, you have to have the state's security guard course plus executive protection training maybe firearms license and a concealed carry permit for that state or multiple states.
So if you when you do your bodyguard course in Ireland, which I know you teach, you've done quite a few. If you're going abroad, then where you can use a firearm, you would have to go and get a firearm license, like go and train in a firearm in a different country. That'd be right.
So if I put it like this, depending on the circumstances and who you're working for. So if you're working for a government agency or you're doing something like Iraq, Afghanistan CP, the company you work for has the permits for the weapons that are issued to you on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
And they would have the licenses from the government. But 99% of the time, you will not be touching a gun. So then these things are your weapons. This is your weapon. So prior preparation and planning prevents all poor performance. So everything is about planning and preparation and being ready and thinking out tactically what circumstances you could find yourself based on the environment you're in. And the most likely circumstances where you're going to be saving your principal is first aid. High probability. Depending on their age profile and their medical profile, which you will also have done. You'll have done a profile of your principal and you'll have done a medical profile of your principal. They won't always give you all the medical information that you require. That's where it comes in handy to be able to talk to the personal assistant and say, listen, I know there might be other things there medically that I need to know. He doesn't want to tell me and I get that. But if you know of anything that will keep him alive and I need to know, you need to tell me. But obviously a bit more diplomatically.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because
So there's a lot involved.
yeah, there's a lot involved,
there's a lot,
especially
yeah.
the planning and preparation side of things and interviewing principals and getting information off them. Sometimes it's like drawing blood from a stone that they don't want to tell you and they don't want you to know. But you know you need to know that information. So you back off, you don't push for it, you sit back and you wait until they're ready to tell you.
And do you prefer, now with all that, do you prefer to be out on a task, or do you enjoy the teaching a little bit more? Or both, equally?
I enjoy the teaching, but you can't teach without sector competence. So you have to work. And I enjoy the work. Especially being working on new projects in interesting places. I'm not looking for the hostile environment, kind of bang, bang, pew, pew type of stuff. But, a place where there's a modicum of threat where you have to be switched on because people get complacent to just fall asleep. And personally, I don't think CP teams should be on one task for longer than 3 or 4 months. They should rotate the team out and put new guys in there because constantly keeping the principle alive is based on being aware of your situation environment you're in. Constantly having the same guys do it, they get jaded, they get tired. So you have to have a team to replace the team. Yeah. So you could do tasks like in different countries, let's say Middle East or Asia, pick one of the stands. Yeah. Have a CP team there minding an executive for an oil company or whatever, and they could be there 3 months. But by 3 months, they need to be rotating out, in my view, because people get tired.
Absolutely.
And when you're doing this job, you don't get a day off.
Right.
You don't get a day off, you work. Or you're involved in planning and preparation in some way. You're driving routes, you're doing your route reconnaissance, picking out routes that you're going to drive and driving them, not 1, not 2, maybe 3. Picking out where all the hospitals are, planning all sorts of things. In the event of, I need to go here. Yeah, so you have to be able to get to a hospital in a safe haven. So you have to plan it and prepare it and write it up. And then every now and again, once it's become a familiar route, yeah, and you're familiar with it, every now and again, do that route recce again because you have to update the information. So every risk assessment, every document you write out is a living document. Can't just write it once and leave it there.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, we've done a risk assessment. Yeah. When was that done? Well, it was last year. Yeah, that's not a risk assessment it's not a living document anymore. It's a year old. Things change inside a year. Well, we've done the route reconnaissance and we've done it last year. Yeah, the roads have changed. Go check again. How many traffic light systems are there now? How many roundabouts were put in? Because in developing countries, things change.
Of course.
Yeah. So even buildings on the side of the road could be more, could be less. So you have to kind of plan.
Yeah, so it's a tough one. And if someone was wanting to get into it, say from Ireland or the UK,
it depends where you want to work. First off, if you're ex-military or police, if you're in the military police in the UK, they have military police close protection unit is one of the best trained CP units in the world. In the German military, they have what's called a Feldjäger, similar training process. France, the same. If you're in the Metropolitan Police in London, again, one of the best trained close protection units in the world. Then you have the Department of State in America. They have the Secret Service. Yeah, US Secret Service. They're some of the best trained bodyguards in the world. Israel, they have the really good trained bodyguards. But if you don't come from those backgrounds and you want to do a course, then you have to look for a training provider to offer you that course. And then it's not just a case of the trade provider, it's a case of who they're connected to, and also then you personally networking with people. So once you've done the course, you're not qualified, you're just certified. Yeah. I always say this to guys, I said, you've done a course, you're now certified. That does not mean you're qualified. And they go, what do you mean? I said, you become qualified with experience and time in the job. It says on paper you're qualified, but to me it's certified.
Yeah, you've just got the bare, that's your black belt. You have enough for the basics.
You can be good on a course and meet the academic requirements, but you might not be good on the ground. So while I wouldn't fail you, I also wouldn't recommend you to protect high-end individuals. So as the instructor, I will assess your abilities and capabilities, capacity, and go, yeah, I'd put you in an RST, put you on a 1 or 2 day task at low level, or put you on a film set, protecting assets on film set, like Netflix or whatever. But I wouldn't put you in a high-end CP course or high-end CP task. And you would have to be that honest with your candidates. Yeah. So you give them that assessment and say, yeah, I would put you to work for me doing executive protection with high-end people because you have the soft skills, the people skills, the communication skills. You have the ability to plan and prepare, and you're adaptable. If you're all those things, you can work in that environment. And it's down to personality and character. Plus, you have to have the willingness to travel and go and network and go to CP events where they do conferences and talk about stuff like this as well. So you go meet people who own companies. Yeah. And engender yourself onto them, talk to them, build a relationship, build a rapport. And they go, I have a task in Ireland. Oh, that guy in Ireland. Oh, it's George. I'll give him a call. Yeah. So build relationships, because close protection is about relationships in terms of business. Yeah. Right? And when you work as a close protection officer, you're self-employed, you're working for yourself, you chase your business. Right. Now, no, not everybody is a super duper businessman, me least of all, but I found my niche in operating and training people, because I really enjoy training people. And that comes again, where from? The martial arts.
All goes full circle.
Yeah.
Everything's interconnected.
George, just really quickly, if you don't mind me asking, you mentioned that obviously in Ireland we're not allowed to draw hold guns or hold knives on our person.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would recommend carrying that was legal for a self-defense purpose?
Okay, so if you look at the law, right, carrying anything that is you deliberately carry for self-defense purpose comes under the Offensive Weapons Act. So if you're walking down the road with a hammer in your hand and you're not a tradesman, that's an offensive weapon. Okay? If you have a blade on you and it's not for work, like a Stanley knife or something like that, that's an offensive weapon. You're going to get charged for that. Now, I used to vape, and I used to always say, the vape pen in my hand, right, helps support my fist when I punch. I can also use it to hit people with, so it's a short stick about that size. Vape pen. You don't have to vape, but you can have it in your hand and use it as a adjunct. Other things, I won't say it to people, where's the usual thing, a set of keys, blah, blah, blah. No. No, you don't want to lose the keys to your house and your car and everything else. Yeah? But there's a thing that people used to do back in the old days was a penny fist. So they take a roll of pennies and have it in their pocket, have it in their hand. It's money. What are you carrying that for? It's money. But it's a roll wrapped in paper from the bank. Put it in your fist. Becomes a weight in your hand. Just think outside the box, guys. You know, if you have a wallet on a chain, yeah, have it so you can clip off, or you have a bike with a chain, like a bike chain, a lighter one with a padlock each end, because they're fundo.
That's the weighted chain thing.
Weighted chain thing from traditional martial arts. Take one lock off, it's no longer an offensive weapon, right? You know, have a loop connected here. You just have it on one end, just on one end. That's a padlock from my bike. That's why I have it in my pocket. The loop is attached to here because I'll forget it. Normal excuse. What else?
Torch.
Torch, you can have a torch, high lume torch with blasty lights that go bloop, 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 cause an epileptic seizure, right? And literally have it that strong. And that can also be a handheld weapon because you can use it to pummel. But you're not deliberately using it to hit people. At the end of the day, personal safety and self-defense is primarily about awareness and distance. So your personal safety is based on your situational awareness and the circumstances you're in and your capacity to deal with problems and solve them. And bodyguarding is the exact same. Yeah. So when you're protecting other people, it's easier because it's objective. When you're protecting yourself, it's a little bit more difficult because it's subjective. And especially when you're protecting family members, it's even more subjective because there's a heightened level of emotion involved. The least amount of emotion that you can put into it, the better. Yeah, so you don't get into an emotional state of shock. The emotional shock and physiological shock is slightly different, right? You don't become hyperbolic. You don't become hysterical. You don't become like a raving madman, as people would say, right? That everything you do is done in a calm fashion. So you have to train your demeanor and your mindset and your personality and character. And Daryl will tell you, my character is outgoing, right? And I can have outbursts, right? But I've trained myself to be quiet in dangerous situations, not to be hysterical. Now, how do you do that? How do you train yourself to be quiet in dangerous situations or calm in dangerous situations? It's very different than having an argument with your girlfriend or your mother or your daughter, in my case. You know, it's all ahead of Daryl. But is there anything else you want me to expand on?
Well, I think, well, first of all, it's fascinating, and I think it's a key point that a lot of people tend to ignore, which is not the flashy fighting part, but the after bit. And I know, Daryl, we've actually talked about this before, that, you know, maybe you have to kind of think about, like, the best way to diffuse a situation or to get out of an unsafe situation is to literally just leave.
And people will go, what if he does this though? What if he does that though? Well, that's the next step. The next step is then you take action. You have to. You can't not take action. Like if somebody starts following you and you say, what are you following me for? And they go, I'm only going the same way. Well, you have to take him at face value.
Yeah.
Right? Until he doesn't pass you. Then you have to go a different route. Or, oh shit, pretend you forgot something. Oh, I have to go back here. And if he follows you again, then you know you're in trouble. So it's what we call in the game a surveillance detection route. Do a dog leg around the city. If you think someone's following you, let's see. Yeah. So, and then in bodyguarding, or especially on the military and policing side of a surveillance detection route, is you would take them down a known route, call ahead, get people to wait, and then block them. And in the military or the police, they would be arrested. Yeah. But in civilian world, not necessarily. But you could do your surveillance detection route to the Garda station. So if you're a woman driving a car and you think you're being followed because somebody said something smart to you at Lidl coming out at 8 o'clock in the evening after you buying something, well, you do a surveillance detection route to the Garda station and make sure you get the reg of the car. Because you don't know what their secondary plan is. Yeah. And if you're a woman and you're grabbed by somebody, don't let them take you to a secondary location. Ever. Right?
You know, it's funny, it's actually something like that happened to us not too long ago, and by accident we did a surveillance detection to the Garda station, but it was opportunistic, it wasn't planned, but we were followed into our, so we lived outside of Dublin. There was no reason why this car would follow us the whole way. And the moment we indicated to go towards the Garda station, because the only place where we were indicating to was the Garda station, there was nothing else up there apart from car park. They turned right, left, gone. We saw them actually going in the opposite direction then when we left the Garda station.
Yeah, because they were looking to see if they'd pick you up again.
Yeah.
So this is the thing about them being smart enough. If you're with somebody else, get them to get the reg of the car.
Which is exactly what we did. We took a photograph, got the reg.
Yeah. So, and that's why important to have dash cams on your rear view mirror or rear view window and your front window. So personal safety and security is all about thinking ahead. It's that simple, really.
One other thing that it's way back earlier in the conversation, which was you alluded to some time you spent in Madagascar.
Yeah.
And I sounded fascinated. I was just wondering if is there any more details you could tell us about that, or is that kind of hush or?
No, the NDAs are gone. So when we work in close protection, we work on in non-disclosure agreements. So NDA and non-disclosure and non-competition agreements last a certain period of time, right? And for professionalism reasons, we don't really talk about who we work for or who we were protected, but we can talk about incidents and ideas or things that happened within there. Like I said, I was able to say I work closely with the Madagascan Special Forces from the Force d'Intervention Gendarmerie Nationale, right? I had 3 guys from that group on my team. Well, 2 from that team and then 2 general average, but really good gendarmerie working with me. And then the person I work for was an executive, a local national executive, not a foreign national executive, but for a foreign company. Can't really go into too much detail on that side, but Madagascar, absolutely beautiful country. Fabulously amazing. The largest producers of sapphires in the world. Yeah, so if that's the sapphire capital of the world, do you want to buy sapphires and become a sapphire dealer? Go to Madagascar. There's a village called, what's it called? Ilikaka. Right? It's a whole street. And you see guys out in the fields digging for sapphires. Right? And then a load of Indian and Sri Lankan guys own all the sapphire shops that you can buy all your stones from. So you can buy pure uncut stones at a cheaper rate there than you could anywhere else and bring them back to your jeweler here, which would then maybe get a bit more money. But you'd have to have special licenses for import, export, etc. But as a tourist, you can buy 1 or 2. I'm always going to say anything. But Madagascar is, great. The people are lovely. It's a very unique place in that it has ethnic diversity from Africa, India, the Filipino, Indonesian islands, that area, and then some Chinese, and then French. Yeah, and they have Irish too. But it used to be a pirate capital.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so everybody from everywhere was there. Yeah, Madagascar is like a microcosm of Africa, but without all the crazy wild animals. The only thing that's crazy down there are the lemurs. They're horrible little shits. Right, but no, they're lovely animals to watch in nature in the wild. But the hotel I was staying in had a pet lemur, and they would let him out every evening. And they said, "Watch now, if he comes over to you, he's going to steal your food." Right, and sure enough, little shit look at you like, "I'm gone." Right? He jumped on one guy's shoulder and pissed down his back. But no, do you want to know anything specific about Madagascar?
I suppose it's just what I was alluding to was maybe more about the story, maybe about the politics involved, or
Okay, I can get into that. So I was working for an executive who was under threat from a local politician who was supported and backed by people from Europe. And those people from Europe were trying to get access to mining rights. Yeah. Which certain companies had and then lost, and then the company I was working for gained, and they were very ethical in terms of their operations, building education training centres, long-term jobs for the community and so on, whereas the other companies wouldn't have been.
wow.
Yeah, and my boss was under threat basically from a local politician who was supported by these other entities, and we had incidences of being surveilled and followed, incidents of people coming up to me with my client's son sitting in a restaurant, sitting there and just looking at us like this. Yeah, and then me going over, sitting with my arm on him, taking a photograph. Not really a good idea, but pissed him off, so he stood up and walked out. Yeah, nobody likes getting their face taken on anything, right? But what I would say is, it's like some of those situations when it comes to resources. Again, I said this earlier on. All war is about resources. All war is about resources, right? It can be couched in something else, but it's always, always, always about resources. Doesn't matter what type of resource it is, it's about that. So whatever is du jour, people want it. Yeah, we can look at Ukraine at the moment, right? All around Donetsk, all the way down to Crimea, full of natural resources that are required for making phones, laptops, all sorts, right? Batteries for cars, everything. And that's the real reason they're having that war. And that's only coming out now in the last week or so. Yeah. Down in Madagascar, you had mineral sands. So if you know what mineral sands are used in, titanium, toothpaste, paint, everything. So a very fluid product that goes into everything on the planet, including food, right? So basically, those who have that particular mining rights have that for 50 years. That's a lot of rights. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of time and a lot of money. And if they can pull it all out as quickly as they can, as much as they can, some people don't care about the environment or the community they're working with. Others do. And some people in power want moolah, and other people in power want people to get moolah, to get money, to have a future. I think it's important, if you have natural resources and mineral sands and stuff like that, then you should be looking at how you're going to use that to benefit the community and society in general. I think we should all pitch in and buy a big batch of land near a hill, right? Dig into it, build tunnels, right? And create Serenity Tribe there.
That's a good idea.
By the way, these jumpers, Savage one.
Yes.
So in the case of cold, buy a Serenity Tribe hoodie, because I'm telling you, you'll sweat bullets.
Thank you very much, George.
Really?
Yeah.
No problem. See, there's a good.
Cheers, buddy.
There's a good. You owe me coffee now,
Your coffee is right.
because he knows what I'm like if I don't get my coffee.
Yeah. I'm surprised we've gone that long.